I've just bought this £500 VFR 800. It's a new project bike, and today was the first time I've ridden it because I bought it to Nick Nomikos at the Two Wheel Centre, MoT tester, part owner of the shop. An MoT, you have to have one for any bike on its 3rd birthday and any car. But to me, an MoT is really important because it's a chance for somebody else to check it over. And because I do all my own maintenance, I want somebody professional checking it. Thing is, failing MoT, there's no real excuse. And as Nick's going to show us, everything that happens in MoT, we'll get through it. I hope this passes, having said that, but it shouldn't really fail. So what do we need to know, Nick?
Hello, my name's Nick. As John said, I'm part owner of the Two Wheel Centre here in Harpenden, doing MoTs for about 20 years. And we are going to MoT this VFR 800 today. They generally should pass because with a motorcycle you will feel if something's not right, and if something's not right, why have you left it until the MOT to get it sorted? So that's what we're going to go through today. We're going to go through front to back, we'll do the lights, the brakes, the suspension, the exhaust, and the bearings, and we're going to go right through it and obviously check, and so you guys can also check at home what it is that we do behind closed doors.
By the end of this video, there'll be no excuse for you to ever fail an MOT again.
So we're going to start off with the lights. First of all, we put the ignition on and we're going to check the brake lights are working. Okay, so they seem to be coming on. And then obviously we then go to directional indicators. We make sure that they're working. We give them a little tap and make sure that they're not interfered with another light. So that's all good. Right, we're going to test the headlight. John, if you want to come in and just sit on your bike. What we're looking for is anything below this black line is acceptable. Anything above it is a fail, okay? And that's on the low beam. So if you just want to flick the high beam up for me, okay? We're good again. We've got a nice big pattern, okay? And it's a nice spread, so that's a pass. What we're also looking for on the headlight is obviously cracks in the lights. Different MOT stations obviously have different equipment, so it's different ways of being tested. But from the point of what I'm seeing today, I'm quite happy. You can, like this has got, obviously because of the mileage, you can see the little indentations, the little stone chips on the glass, but it doesn't seem to affect the beam, so we're good to go.
So Nick, you've just done that drag test, kind of, isn't it? To test the brakes. Some people use a rolling road. They're all just how you test the brakes. But I think it's more interesting now is you're going to actually examine this stuff, aren't you?
Yeah, so we've done the brake test on the floor, and now we're going to just check the discs, the pads, and make sure that they're, because although you put it on a rolling road or you put it on the machine, the sort of tester, you don't see about dragging brakes and all that. It's all done hands-on, which we do up in the air.
Now, Nick, obviously you're checking the brakes on here, you check the rear. This is a bit of kind of interest to me because this one's a bit different because it's got this linked brake malarkey. Do we need to worry about that on here? Does that make any difference to what you're testing?
So with linked brakes, John, we're not actually checking the brake performance of it, so it doesn't really make much difference from that. All we're checking now is leaks on the pipes. Yeah. Is there any cracks or cuts in the pipes? Any leakage onto the disc? Also brake pad wear, and obviously corrosion to the caliper itself, the fittings. Make sure that nothing's loose or nothing could be dangerous.
Typical fail points on brake pads, on brakes. What we look at, because I was a bit worried about these. I don't think there's any excuse for me bringing a bike to you that's got discs that feel a bit thin for me, and I was worried this is going to fail. But it's how bad are these?
Right, so these discs aren't that bad, and what we're also checking for is sort of cracks in the disc, corrosion pitting, stuff like that. If the brakes are sticking, you've come from further north they would overheated. And the problem with sticking brakes is that's what will happen.
Yeah.
You'll overheat the discs and they will crack and then obviously shatter.
Yeah.
And that's the dangerous point about it.
Something we've mentioned a couple of times already has been this basic maintenance stuff. We're not going to go in too much about basic maintenance. That's going to be another video that we're going to have pretty soon. So hit the subscribe button probably down there. But I wanted to add, actually, we're about to do a series of basic maintenance courses with Nick, and Bike Social members get access to that. And remember that Bike Social membership, check it out at www.bikesocial.co.uk/join. Bike Social members get us huge access to discounts, offers, competitions, and training courses like this, whether it's riding training or maintenance training. You can get all that. Bennett's Direct Bike Insurance customers get it all for free, or anyone can join. So do check it out, because before you spend any money on your bike or do anything with your bike, have a look at some of the deals on there, because there's hundreds and hundreds of offers that you just can't miss. And that basic maintenance thing, it's going to be another video soon where we're going to go through that with Nick, and hopefully we'll see some of you there. I'm kind of gassing on too much here. How are we never going to fail another MOT? Anything else about brakes?
Right, so with brakes, what I've done, I've just found some old ones. So that's pretty much new, okay, and that's pretty worn.
Yeah.
Both of these will pass an MOT. Now, if you look at the difference in the pad, you can see that even when it's on a pass and advise, it's still, there's a lot there. Okay,
Yeah.
so if it goes further than that, then you know you're just not
See,
looking.
I'd be wanting to change those, pretty sharpish.
Yeah,
there's not much
but
meat left on that.
That's a pass and advise.
Really.
So we're now moving on to the tyres and the wheels. It's very important, obviously, to check this thoroughly. First of all, we use the MoT sort of testing tool for checking the depth. We're at 5 mil, so these are pretty new. So we're going to check them, but they still got the little tags on them. So what we're checking for with the tyres is obviously the depth. We're checking for cracks, tears, nails, anything like that. And also if, for instance, the tyre is abnormal, you know, it's got a bulge in it or anything like that. We're also going to do the wheels at the same time because it's part of the tyre as well. And we spin the wheel and just make sure that there's no dents, obviously no cracks in the wheels. If it was a spoked wheel, then we would get the tool for checking spokes and we tap them and just make sure that there's no loose spokes. So both the tyres will be fitting with directional marks. Make sure they match up with the wheel so they're going the right way round, because with these front wheels you can put them in the wrong way. So although your tyre and wheel are fitted the right way, if you've taken the wheels off and had the tyres fitted somewhere, you could possibly put them in the wrong way and it would still work and you'd still drive down the road. So that's why we check for direction on the wheel and on the tyres. One more thing that's coming in on the MOT, they haven't told us a date as yet, is the date on the tyres. For most people that don't know, your tyres are dated. So if you have a look at the tyre and go around, on certain brands it's certainly different, but most of them it's all the same. And there is 4 digits in the tyre. What it normally means on the first 2 digits is the week of the year it was manufactured, and then the last 2 digits is the year that it was manufactured. So you can check if your tyres are 10, 15 years old, it will pass an MOT, but I can honestly tell you that they're not gripping. But that isn't part of the MOT, but they have brought it in on lorries. So it won't be long where it comes in. So maybe it's time to sort of check your tyres and just make sure that they're not too old.
That's really interesting, Nick, because I know like that date thing. Am I right in thinking as well, that date format changed a while ago, but there's no point in really explaining it, because if your date format doesn't match that date, your tyres are too bloody old anyway, so you shouldn't be using them. And this isn't like one of those things you go, no, it's optional. Yeah. Tyres go off, they get hard, they're just, please don't use old tyres. Yeah.
Funny you should say that, John. These are just 2 tyres that I've got from out the back. These were ridden on the public road. They rode here. They didn't just wear out. This didn't happen overnight. So, you know, these are visual effects that we go back to when we were talking about the CBT and checking like that. If your tyre looks like that, or your tyre looks like that, why are you waiting until it looks that bad before you're changing them? So now we're going to check the suspension and wheel bearings. I'll give you a bit of a tip as well. So when we're obviously checking the front suspension, we're doing like a bounce. Make sure that the suspension is sort of going down and coming up, to keep it in basic words, up and down freely. and obviously there is a restriction to it. If you want to check to see if your head races are loose, if you just move your bike slightly backwards and slightly forwards and then just jab the brakes on, if you can feel here or feel a clonk in the bars, so across here, so if you feel a clonk here or sort of normally here, as you're jabbing on the brakes as you're moving forwards, that would suggest that your head races are slightly loose, or there's a bit of play in the fork legs. Either way, there's a bit of play. So we've done the bounce test, and obviously we're looking down inside the fairing and make sure there's no oil on the bottoms of the stanchions. Obviously, the one thing I will say about today is obviously this is just a mock run through. Okay, so we generally do things in different ways. We've scaled it down to sections, but we visually check most of the bike as we're going around in the MOT route of the way that we've been trained to do it. So the rear suspension, what we do is we just sit on the bike, so we bounce up and down on it. And again, what we're looking for is whether the suspension bottoms out or not. So we can see whether or not the shop's working. But again, what we really want to do is get down nice and low and inspect the suspension. In here is the shock absorber. Basically what you're really checking for is you want to look at the bottom and look at the damper rod and see if there's any oil, see if the seal has leaked. And again, you will feel when you're riding it, because it will have no absorbing. It will just be moving up and down. The other thing we're doing is we're going to check the rear suspension bushes. Okay, and the way we do that is quite a simple test. Is we basically pull on the wheel, and I mean, I don't know if you can see that there is a slight bit of play in it. If you have a look, you can just see there's just a bit of play in the bottom bushes, and you can feel it. You can feel it clonking, which again, this is no special tools. This is just on the main stand. You could do this at home. That would be an advisory, and most bikes do have that bit of wear on the bottom, and that's due to normally bad maintenance again. The linkage has never probably been out and it hasn't been greased, and that's the difference. Now we're going to do rear wheel bearings, so we're going to spin the wheel. Okay, so we get no graunchy noises. Obviously you might better hear the chain that's going around, but there's no graunchy noises. We're going to grab the top and bottom of the wheel. Yeah, so we're just giving the wheel a shake, see if there's any play. There's nothing there. Rotate the wheel and just check it again, see if there's any play. Obviously this is single-sided swinging arm, but it still has bearings. Some of them are needle over, but they are bearings. So John's going to push down the back of the bike for me, just to raise the front wheel off the ground. Okay, and what we're going to check is, again, the wheel bearings. So we're going to grab the mudguard, we're going to grab the wheel and just move it and see if there's any play in the wheel, which there isn't. And we're going to rotate it, so we can obviously see if there's any roughness in the bearings and any play, but these are okay. Whilst John's helping me and got the front, we're also going to check the head races. We've also done the bounce on the forks, but we're also going to check again. We're going to run our hands over the forks and just make sure that there's no oil. And we're going to centralize the steering and then just grab the two bottoms of the forks and give them a pull. Now it is moving, if you can see that on the...
I can feel it back here.
Yeah,
I can feel that knocking.
But that's actually the stand. That's not that's not the head races. So as an MOT tester, we have to be able to tell the difference between another part of the bike which is moving as to the part of the bike that we're actually testing. Whilst we're doing that, we're also going to check the head races for notchiness. And the way we do that is we rotate the steering from one side to the other. Okay, it should be a smooth operation. Now, normally the dented race, you normally feel just over center. Okay, so as you cross over center, it will just fall into like a little dip, which this isn't doing.
And is that a fail or an advisory?
It can depend on how bad it is. If you can rotate the steering like this, and it is notchy, but it freely goes from one end to the other, that would probably be an advisory. If you actually push the steering and it stops in the center, then that would be a fail. But most of the MOT is down to the tester's discretion, so it all depends on how serious they feel it is when they're testing it. But that's all okay. You can let it down now, John.
So all this stuff, there's some things to be aware of what you're feeling for. It does sound like it's fairly easy to check for yourself with a mate or with your partner to help you. But we have got a centre stand on here. So if I wanted to check this myself at home and I've only got a side stand, how would you still want to do that?
So most of the time you're at home, you're on your own, you don't have a ramp, you know, and stuff. So we want you to be able to check your vehicle and make sure it's all good. So one way of doing it is obviously if you haven't got a main stand, you can put the bike onto its side stand, like so. And if you wanted to check, for instance, the head races to see if they're notchy, what you could do is just pull it back on the side stand and then obviously check that there is no notchiness. Now, the problem with doing this is, one, the stand could snap and then it will fall on you and hurt you. Two, if you lose complete balance of it, again, it could fall on you. The other thing is, whilst it's pivoting like this, it could quite easily go onto the front wheel and then actually roll off the stand as well. So again, to check the rear wheel, you could do this with a friend and you could be holding it and he could be checking it, or he could be holding it and you could be checking it. But that is one way of getting the front and the back off the ground. But I stress I would only really do it unless you're comfortable doing it and you have control over it. But that's basically the how you could do it at home if you don't have a main stand. Next section we're going to do is the exhaust system. We're going to obviously check for corrosion, check for noise. The one thing that you guys may or may not know is that motorcycles are not checked for emissions. Okay, so if you ever get a failure and they say the bike's emissions is not right, they're winding you up because it's not testable. So the first thing we obviously check with the exhaust is make sure that it's got a manufacturer stamp. And then obviously we're checking to make sure that it's not loose and it's on solid. Okay, and then obviously we're coming round to the front. With the fairings, you can't always see anything. And the one thing I will say with the MOT is obviously we can only test what we can see. We're not allowed to remove things to get a better perspective of it. And again, that works into the favour of the customer. Okay, so if the exhaust is leaking from inside the fairing and I can't see it and I can't feel it, but I can hear it, I could give you an advisory, but I can't fail it on something that I cannot see. Once we've done that, we will actually start the bike. And what we're doing is we're going to run our hands around the joints. Obviously this bike has been sitting around for a couple of hours, so it's not that warm, but obviously if you're doing this at home to check, make sure you don't burn your hands. You don't have to go that close. There is sometimes a hole in the bottom of the silencer to let out sort of water and stuff like that. So what you do is you run your hands around all the exhaust, down the joints, and just make sure that you can't feel anything, okay? Why do exhaust systems rot? It has got a bit of surface corrosion on here. We get hold of the tool and we can just give it a little tap, make sure it's solid. And this is basically an MOT tool that we can obviously tap the frames and the swinging arms and make sure that they're all solid. But the swinging arm is normally under here, which is the problem. But obviously at the moment we're doing the exhaust and that's pretty solid. But the exhaust, like I said, is pretty much, is it solid? Is it on and it's not going to come off? You know, and is it too noisy?
Yeah. If it makes your tester's ears bleed, there's a good chance they might go, you can't have that.
Yeah, like again, I'm going to keep saying it because I said it to you last night when we were texting. It's so hard to actually fail an MOT.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully, you know, today you guys have seen. I mean, this is, you know, probably maybe the wrong example because although it's done a lot of miles, it's actually been looked after.
Yeah.
So everything seems to be working on it and everything is quite nice. But some of the stuff we get, you know, is just diabolical, you know. So next on the list, we've got wheel alignment. So John, if you want to come in.
Okay.
So both of the tyre, so are you touching both of the bits of the tyre at the back?
Oh, what, front and back of the tyre? You're right.
Right, okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah, that's good now.
Okay, and that is it, if you want to put it down. Because obviously what we've done is we're just checking that the steering is straight.
Yeah.
And then all I'm looking is that the gap on the either side is the same.
Equal, yeah.
It's in the customer's favour. We're looking for abnormal.
Yeah.
We're not looking for 1,000 millimeters. We're looking for, oh my God, that's one way and that's the other, that's wrong.
So Nick's kindly run through everything on the MOT here. I should stress, if there are any other MOT testers here, Nick has been doing this to try and make this video. He's now going to do the actual MOT on this bike. We now know it is going to pass, so that's great from my point of view. I honestly do think that it's worth getting a proper, trusted MOT tester to do it because they're checking over your bike. There's a lot of value to it. And if you do think it's harsh, I'm not really sure how you can think it's harsh, but just think yourself lucky we're not living in places like Spain and that where things are a lot tighter. There's no reason not to pass an MOT really. Hopefully this has shown you. Give it a check. And be sure to check out, before you spend any money on your bike, make sure you check out bikesocial.co.uk/join. And if you want to get some training, if you want to get some of that basic maintenance in and do something with Nick, check it out and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Today was the first time I've ever ridden it, and it was to bring it to here to... So this is the intro for this video. That doesn't help you, does it?
That's all right. Yeah,
Now Nick, you're checking all... Basically, you can do it that way, but if it goes wrong, we didn't tell you to.
Yeah.
So we've been through a lot of it. There's quite a few things I think that are going to crop up in comments on here, Nick, like what about daylight MOT? Or is there such a thing as daylight MOT?
There is such a thing as daylight MOT, and what people need to understand is that with a daylight MOT, that if, for instance, it's a dark day, it's down to the policeman whether or not he thinks, just because it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, does not mean that you're allowed to be out on it because it's got a daylight MOT. Yeah. It's down to the discretion of the police officer to tell you that it's too dark and you should have your lights on. The same as the moment it starts raining, you have to pull over because the law states when it rains, you have to put your lights on. Ah. So as much as people think this daylight MOT is a get-arounder sort of, tape up all the lights and, it's more grief, really. And the other thing is, most motorcyclists, they get accused of didn't see you brake. And if you've got no brake lights at all, and if you don't know what the motion is, and how many car drivers know that means I'm slowing down?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things with the daylight MOT. I would say if you've got an old British bike, that's what it really conforms to, and that's the loophole for it. Okay. It's not really so you can go and buy a modern motorbike and start turning it.
Street fighter it. Yeah. And what about trail? Because sometimes trail bikes, don't they? They might have no.
So trail bikes, the one with them is indicators. So if it doesn't have, I think the ruling is obviously I can double check it for you guys, but I think the ruling is something to do with rear foot. If it hasn't got the rear foot pegs, doesn't have to have indicators. If it's got off-road tyres.
That's complicated.
Yeah.
If it's not got foot pegs,
if it's got off-road tyres,
in
it, and it hasn't got rear foot pegs, it doesn't have to have indicators.
Right. And you said mirrors aren't tested on speedos. So what if you've got mirrors and they're smashed?
Well, that comes under structural, so they're insecure or dangerous, sharp objects, stuff like that, but not from the point like a car. A car can fail for not having a wing mirror. Okay, but you can take the mirrors off a bike and it doesn't matter. Foolish, but your speedo, it can. What if it's got a speedo and it doesn't work? Well, the thing is, that's what happens. That's why when you go to buy a bike, sometimes the speedo cable's been broken for 5 years. It's got the same mileage for 5 years.
Yeah. But that's not an MOT fail.
It's not a fail.